Well, let me welcome all of you again. Really glad that you're here. If you're here for the first time, hope that you'll stick around and shake my hand later. I'd love to meet you. I'm very glad that you're here. You're a VIP as far as we're concerned. Today is really focused on your experience and making sure that you feel like, hey, this is a place I could belong. I really feel welcome here. And so we think about that every week. Glad it's feeling a little bit better in here. Anybody? I mean, there's no air, I don't think, still, but somehow miraculously the breath of God has breathed on this place and we feel better. So we were happy to hear that in the first service. But we are wrapping up this series, or at least I believe we are. I'll explain what I mean in just a minute. But this is part 4 of this series, See Your World. And so here's what I want to encourage you to do. If you're here for the first time, or maybe you're just coming back after a while, you kind of taking a little break for the summer, whatever, I just want to encourage everybody to always go back and to catch up with the rest of the series, parts 1 through 3, because what we've been talking about is so foundational as far as what it means to be the church, to be a Christian. And so I don't want us to miss that, because the reason we work in series is because we can't say everything we want to say in one sermon. And so really it's like a sermon broken up into multiple parts. And so that's why catching up and following along is so important. So I hope that you'll consider doing that. But before we get into today's message, I want to mention what's going to be happening next week, because I'm really excited about this. As many of you know, we are partnered with an organization called ARC. ARC is the Association of Related Churches. And this is just a network of churches that is fully committed to equipping and training and funding and sending out and launching and planting brand new churches, life-giving churches like this one, all over the country, even all over the world now. Since 2001, more than 760-something churches have been successfully launched in that number of years. It's incredible. And we were number 358, so we were a part of that several years ago. But I also now get to coach because of y'all's success and how well you guys have done. I actually get to coach other people and other church planters and couples who are going through that process, and so I get to kind of walk them through. And so by association, you guys have helped launch brand new churches in places like this, Greenville, South Carolina. I get to coach these people. Miramar Beach, Florida. Jackson, Mississippi. Macomb, Mississippi. Had no clue where that was until I helped this couple. Pensacola, Florida. Frisco, Texas. And soon to come at the end of next month, Boise, Idaho. You may remember Rhett and Linda Barden. But they're getting ready to launch, and they're doing phenomenal. So, but these 3 with the asterisk by it, I actually get to oversee these as well. I'm an overseer for these churches. We have overseers that serve our church, but I get to serve in that capacity in these 3 locations. And so basically that just means I get to continue to pastor those pastors, and so I serve kind of as outside accountability for those pastors, and then for the congregation as well. And so that's kind of what I get to do. One of those is in Pensacola, and it's led by Joe and Susanna Driver. We got to meet them a couple of years ago. They launched EKKO Life Church at the beginning of 2017, last year. Already, they have more than 380 people in a regular attendance on a Sunday morning in their services, which is phenomenal. They had 460-something people at their launch about a year and a half ago. And so really incredible what God is doing through beautiful family, beautiful kids. We've gotten to know them over the last couple of years. But Joe has agreed to come and fill in for me next weekend while I'm out of town. And so because of what God's been doing, I know that he's going to do an incredible work through him, that he's going to have a word to share with you guys. And that's why I say I don't know that we're landing the plane this week or not, because he may kind of add on to this next week. I'm not positive yet. He may not. So I'm going to pretend we're landing the plane today and finishing this off, and then we'll just see what happens next week. So just make sure you're here for that. I know that regardless, it's going to be a blessing, and I know that you're going to receive him well and honor him for being willing to come up and serve our church in that way. So I hope that you'll do that. Be here next week. So as we get ready to wrap this up today, we have been talking about this idea of seeing our world. This is what, as believers, as Christians, and this has kind of been like a talking to Christians kind of series, we've been talking about this idea of seeing your world, that we've got to open our eyes. We have the responsibility to know what's going on. We can't just kind of stand in a corner, not paying attention to what's going on around us because we're overwhelmed or because there's just too much or because we don't think we have what it takes, but instead opening our eyes, paying attention, experiencing other people's hurt and their pain, and then reaching into their world and sharing something and doing something about it. And that's the idea. That's the point, because we've said this, that you can't reach somebody or something that you aren't aware of, that you can't see. You can't love what you can't see. And so we've got to be willing to open our spiritual eyes and see people and see what's going on around us. And so in order to kind of finish things off today, I want to actually take us back to the beginning. I want to take us to where we were at the very beginning of this series. And we looked at an encounter that Jesus had with this Samaritan woman at a well. You probably remember the story. You may be familiar with that. But he has this encounter, and through the midst of their conversation, he ends up telling her some personal things about her life, things that he probably shouldn't have known. And she's thinking, is the man reading my email? You know, what's going on? How does he know these things? And she becomes convinced in their conversation that this guy must be a prophet. Oh, sir, you musteth be a prophet. And because you told me things that nobody knows. And so she becomes convinced of this. You must be the Messiah. You must be the Son of God. And that's what, you know, she gets so excited that she takes off. She leaves her water jar there. And she heads back into town. She wants to tell everybody about it, because that's what you do when you meet Jesus. And wants to tell everybody about it. And of course, everybody in town is like, she's, you know, either lying or she's, you know, crazy or, you know, I don't know. Maybe she's telling the truth, but they wanted to know. And so the whole town decides to come up the road and they want to meet Jesus. They want to hear for themselves. Well, in the meantime, kind of the third party to this is the disciples here. The disciples they got back when they were finishing their conversation, and they can't believe, you kind of, looking at the words and the things that they're saying to one another, they can't believe that Jesus is wasting his time talking to this woman. You know, what in the world? Why would he waste his time talking to this? They don't see. Their eyes are closed. They don't see what Jesus is up to. They're not paying attention. They're oblivious to his agenda. You know, what in the world is Jesus doing? I don't know. He's taught, shouldn't be wasting his time. He's a rabbi. He's a man. He's a Jew. We don't associate with them. And yet he's talking to this woman. And so here we get this picture of Jesus anticipating this town coming up, because he knows like something has happened to this woman. And she's excited. And so he knows that there's going to be an opportunity with this town of people will come. Well, the disciples are just not really paying attention at all. They're more worried about what's for lunch than they are about reaching people. And so they're not thinking about anything. And so they're just kind of, watching the scene as this takes place, wondering when is this going to end? When are we going to move on? And Jesus looks at his disciples as the people are making their way up the road, and he says, open your eyes and look. Open your eyes. And I can imagine that he's pointing. He's pointing off. He's looking at his disciples. He's a little frustrated, if you're not getting this. And he's pointing up the road. Pay attention. Pick your head up. Look and see, because there's something coming that I'm excited about, and you should be too. It's not about lunch. It's about these people. Open your eyes and look. And he says, hey, look at the fields. They are ripe for harvest. And he uses this analogy. I mean, he's not pointing at actual fields. He's pointing at this group of people coming up the road. He's pointing at this town. People who the disciples otherwise would just have ignored. Because, who was he pointing at? These dirty half-breed Samaritans that Jews wanted nothing to do with. They hadn't for centuries. They didn't get along. This was like extreme racism at best. They didn't want anything to do with them. That was just the cultural climate that these Jewish men had grown up with. That's all the disciples knew. You don't associate with these guys. We're doing ministry here, Jesus. Obviously, it's not with these people. You can't, surely there's somebody behind them that you're pointing to. You can't be pointing to these dirty old Samaritans, because they're just kind of in our way. These men would have been thinking, I wish these guys would get out of the way and clear a path so that we could actually get to church tonight and do some real ministry. That's kind of the way they're processing here. We got to set up for snack supper. We got important things coming. Who are these people getting in our way? And yet Jesus is saying, you're missing it. Open your eyes. Are you kidding me? Pay attention to my agenda here. My message isn't just for you. I'm not here just for you. My message is for everybody, including these people walking up the road. You see this town of people? My message is for them. And for everybody else, open your eyes, pay attention. This is the need that I want you to see right now. This is what's in front of you. And then he says, and they're like a crop that's ripe and ready for harvest. They're ready now. And sure enough, that harvest didn't take long to be reaped, because this group of people, when they saw the Samaritans, they came to him and they urged him. This group of people were excited and they wanted to know more. They said, stay with us, talk to us. And sure enough, he did, and he stayed for 2 days. It's like they paused. They thought they were just stopping through, and they stayed for 2 days. And then because of Jesus' words, many more put their faith in him. Many more believed, not just the woman. Now they believed because of the words of Jesus. This was, get this, this wasn't an accident. This didn't just kind of accidentally happen. Jesus intentionally paused, put everything on hold, had his eyes open, and he stayed with them. He went to them. He got in their world. He shared life with them. He did life with them. He met them where they were, just like they were. And he shared the hope that he had to share. He shared his message. It was for them. And as a result, many put their faith in him. Many who were lost became found. And Jesus was saying, that's what I want you to see. Don't miss that. That's what I'm here to do. You see, Jesus knew something. He was modeling something for his followers. That it's not just about kind of our agenda and doing, coming and doing the church thing and being good people. And it's not just about that. From the very beginning of Jesus' ministry, he made it very clear that he was here to equip and to train his followers to actually do the work. In other words, he knew that the harvest couldn't be done alone. It couldn't be reaped by itself. Jesus was smarter than that. He was a better leader than that. He knew that he needed a group of people who would be mobilized and ready and equipped to be sent and to do something, not just to open our eyes and go, yeah, okay, so that's great. I'll be praying for you. Send you a little check every now and then. That's fine. That's part of it. But also then willing to do something about it, to be willing to go. Jesus wasn't just kind of getting things ready. He knew that he needed people. And he makes it very clear. Matthew records a conversation that happens, something that Jesus shares with his disciples earlier in his ministry. Jesus went through Matthew records for us, he went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness. It's kind of this was like a snapshot of what Jesus' ministry always looked like. He didn't skip towns. Jesus went to all the little towns and villages, the big ones, the small ones, the places that weren't easy to go to, the places where there wasn't necessarily going to be easy success. He didn't just go to where there was money or where, his audience would, acclaim him and be so excited that he was there. He went where it was difficult, where it was inconvenient, where it wasn't where they would normally go, where people didn't look like him or talk like him or dress like him. That's where he went. And he didn't bypass. He went everywhere. He went to all these towns and he completed ministry. He didn't just teach. He didn't just talk. He proclaimed this message. He shared life. He did life with them. He spent time with them. And then he met their needs. He healed them. He was holistically meeting needs. He was doing everything that he could. Well then, when he saw the crowds, and just get this is Jesus' eyes being open, because he saw. He paid attention. He knew what was happening. He had his eyes open, and he wanted his followers to as well. He said, when he saw the crowds, he didn't get overwhelmed. He didn't get nervous. He didn't back up in fear. He had compassion on them, and he embraced it. His heart was broken because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. This is what Jesus saw. His eyes were wide open, and everywhere they went, there were crowds of people. Everywhere they went, there were needs to be met. And I can just imagine Jesus constantly saying, guys, there's constantly people. There's constantly needs. There's always needs to be met. Everywhere we go. Can you just imagine the scene every time they went to a new place and the disciples are like, good grief, is it ever going to end? I mean, I don't know that we can do enough fast enough. You ever felt that way? I imagine that occasionally they would have conversations that were like, I'm a little overwhelmed. I don't know that we can do enough for all of the need, for all of the people. There's so much going on. Everywhere we go, there's sick people, hurting people, there's death, there's poverty, there's orphans everywhere we go. People don't have enough, they don't have jobs, there's unemployment, there's divorces, there's addiction, there's all kinds of problems. I mean, what do we do? I'm overwhelmed. I imagine that's kind of how we feel sometimes. Maybe you've had this experience and you're getting off the interstate or, maybe off the bypass and you drive down and you're getting ready to, you're at the light and maybe there's a homeless man there and he's begging for food and you're thinking, well, I could give him half of my Big Mac, but what good's it really going to do? You ever had that thought? It's like, there's more than 500,000 people every night that sleep homeless across this country. Like, it's not going to really make a difference. And we wind up not doing anything. We kind of get stifled in that moment. I don't know. It won't make a difference. Maybe we get overwhelmed with statistics like the fact that there are more than 65,000 people in our county, Elmore County alone, who aren't connected to a local church. That's a staggering thought as we sit in here and complain about the air not working. That there's people who don't have that hope, who don't share what we share. And sometimes, isn't it true that our eyes get closed because we're overwhelmed, because it's just a little too much? I just don't know. And yet Jesus is saying, no, that's not it. I don't want you to get standoffish. Don't get nervous. Don't back down. Don't let fear get in the way. You see, Jesus even made the same point. He said, look, the harvest is plentiful. I know, he's using that same analogy. He's saying, I know. It's full, plentiful. There's plenty of harvest. Isn't this interesting? Jesus is saying harvest isn't the issue. Harvest isn't the problem. The fact that there's blessing, the fact that there's people to go around, the fact that there are lost people all around you with hurt and with need and with real life problems going on, the harvest is plentiful. It's here. That's not the problem. The problem is that the workers are so few. There's just not enough people with their eyes open willing to do something about it. That's what I'm concerned with. And so Jesus says, if you're going to pray about something, guys, I need you to pray about this. He's talking to his disciples. Pray this way. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into the harvest field. Would you do that? Can you partner with me? You don't even have to pray for the harvest. Guess why? Because it's here. The harvest is already here. Jesus was pointing at it as the Samaritans were coming up the road. Look, the harvest is here. The field is ripe. You've just got to pay attention and be willing to do something. Don't get overwhelmed. Don't be stifled by fear. Do something. If you're going to pray about something, pray that God would send more workers. And he wasn't excluding the idea that they would be a part of that. He just assumed that they were already a part of that. So when he's saying to you and me, I want you to pray for more workers, that doesn't mean that we're not a part of that number. That's all our responsibility. You see, Jesus, with Jesus continuing to talk about it like it was a harvest, and these guys, it was an agricultural economy, they understood this. They knew what was going on here. There was a sense of urgency. Isn't there a sense of urgency when it comes to a harvest? When something is ripe, it can't sit on the vine for too long. Why? Well, because eventually it'll rot. Either a harvest is reaped or eventually it rots. Isn't that true? At some point, you got to pick that fruit. You've got to do something with it. You can't just say, no farmer says, oh, it looks like harvest is ready. The fields are ripe. I think it's about time, but I'm really tired. I'm going to wait a few weeks. We're going on vacation. No. Life stops when the harvest shows up. And it's all about the harvest. And unless there's enough people in place to go reap that harvest, then you might lose some of it. And I wonder, just personally speaking, I wonder, could it be that there are some of you in here who have been praying for God to bless you with harvest, to bring the harvest? Oh, Lord, would you bring the harvest? Would you Could it be that he's actually already blessed you with it? Could it be that it's already right in front of you? That you've been praying for this, but your eyes have actually been closed and you just haven't seen it? You haven't recognized it, even though it's right in front of you. I wonder if that's the case for some of us, because our eyes are closed and we've missed it. Why? Because it didn't look like what we thought it was going to look like. It wasn't where we thought it would be. It wasn't as easy or as obvious as we thought it would be. And so we're missing it. And yet it's right in front of us. This is why, as Pastor Leroy was talking about earlier, this is why small group matters. It's why we need people in our lives, because isn't it true that so often other people can see things in our lives that we can't see ourselves? And we need help sometimes to see the very things that we're praying for that are already there, that are already available to us. And maybe it just needs to be reaped. It's either reap it or let it rot. And I wonder how many opportunities rot because we weren't paying enough attention. We didn't seize that opportunity. We didn't seize the moment and do something with it. You see, Jesus, he didn't come to create a bunch of good people who went to church and sang some songs and, ate dinner together. That's great, and that's all a part of fellowship and being the body of Christ. But that's not why he came. Jesus came in order to mobilize an army of people who would go into the field and do work. He knew he wasn't going to do everything and accomplish everything on his own. As far as the work, he needed people who had their eyes open, who were willing to go and to share and do life with people, even where it was difficult, and talk about and share with them the love of Jesus. That's what he was creating. He didn't just want a bunch of followers who kind of acted like him. He wanted a bunch of followers who loved like him, who embraced the compassion when your heart was broken, and didn't allow it to overwhelm you, all of the overwhelming need that's all around us. That's what Jesus is longing for. That's what he wants for. Matter of fact, the night before he was crucified, in John's gospel, he records for us some of Jesus' very last words, some of his last prayers. And it's interesting because Jesus didn't spend any time praying about the harvest, because the harvest was already happening. It was already there. Jesus prays for the workers. Listen to some of the words he says. He said, I pray for them. He's talking about those who were his followers. I'm not praying for the world, but for those you have given me, for they are yours. Holy Father, protect them by the power of your name. The name you gave me, so that they may be one as we are one. Protect those people. Protect the workers. Mobilize this army. And as you, check this out, as you sent me into the world, I have sent them into the world. I've sent them. That's who he was concerned with. For those who already believe. Because he knew that if we didn't catch this vision, that the movement would have ended. The movement would have ended with his death and even his resurrection if we weren't willing to open our eyes. He knew that eternity hung in the balance for so many people based on our willingness to have our eyes open and to see what's going on and to see the need and to reach out and to participate. Not just kind of soak it up and consume, but to participate in what God was up to. That's what Jesus was doing. That's who we are called to be. But I think one of the greatest threats to the harvest, to the need that's all around us, one of the greatest threats to our ability to do anything about it in the church today is just our fear or complacency. Because our eyes kind of stay closed. And we may, peek out every now and then, but we kind of like what it feels like behind our walls because it's more comfortable. And I think one of the most dangerous things about the state of the church today, and I'm just talking as a whole, this isn't everywhere and everybody in every church, but here in North America, for the most part, I think we've gotten to be experts at doing everything except reach out to lost people. I think we've gotten really good at doing church and doing life and, learning Bible verses and getting our theology right. And we forget that we are called to go, that Jesus, his final prayer, one of his final prayers was to send us. I'm sending them into the world. That they are to represent me. And so protect them, Father. Encourage them. Make them one so that they are together in this. Not one just so that we sing Kumbaya and hold hands. But so that we are mobilized and go out. And so there's some things that I think we can say together in order to claim and make true in our own lives. Some things we need to be willing to commit to if we're going to really make it. If we take the words of Jesus seriously, if we're really going to be the church, if we're going to be followers of Jesus, then these are some things we've got to be willing to commit to. We have to be able to say, first of all, that it's my responsibility. It's my responsibility. Be a contributor, not a consumer. See, I think when Jesus said, hey guys, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few, pray to the Lord of the harvest that he would send more workers into the harvest field. And it's like, okay, so I'm supposed to pray for that, but I'm not supposed to be that. See, I think that's the way we process sometimes. When the truth is, we're all responsible. We all have a part to play. Here's the thing. Our role all may look a little bit different. I understand that. But if our eyes are open, then we all recognize that we are responsible, that we are a part of this, that we are participators, not just, what's in it for me? Well, I didn't get anything out of it today. Well, I didn't learn anything. Well, I didn't, I'm just not being fed. I've heard that so many times. It's like, okay, that's great. But have you been feeding anybody? Because in my experience, when you serve, when you get outside of yourself and when you're feeding other people, you get fed. I mean, that's just the way it works. We grow when we're actually pouring ourselves out and investing in others. And so it's like, maybe that's why. We're not just consumers. We are contributors. It's my responsibility. And then we've got to be able to say, I have what it takes. To be confident in that, even if you aren't certain. I have what it takes. Stop making excuses. Fear is that isolating, stifling emotion in us. And we look around and we see all the stuff going on. It's like, nothing I can do about it. And we say, I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't have the resources. I don't have the know-how. I'm not smart enough. I don't know enough about the Bible. I've not been a Christian for long enough. I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm not strong enough. I'm too weak. We make excuses, and therefore we just don't end up doing much of anything. It's like, well, when I've gone to Sunday school for 43 years, then I'll be ready. It's like, no, you should be teaching. You should be pouring yourself out. You should be investing, reinvesting what's been poured into you. This isn't, there really aren't any more excuses because we all have a part to play. It may look different, our roles may look different, but we all are responsible and you do have what it takes. Here's what I can promise you. Every single one of you, I don't care who you are, every single one of you has exactly what you need to do exactly what God has placed in front of you. You do, because you have God's Spirit living within you. If you've been given a harvest and it has been placed in front of you, then you have what it takes to do exactly what it takes. And so be willing to say that. I have what it takes. And then finally, it may not be what I want or expect. You see, God doesn't always call us to the easy and to the obvious. It's one of those things that kind of frustrates me. I see people like, they're talking about, I want to be in ministry and I want to go serve, or I want to go into, I want to do these different things. And yet they're not willing to go do hard things. Like their assumption is that it must be at a really large church and it must be doing exactly what I love to do and it must be kind of the perfect scenario and I make, like full-time salary and benefits and retirement and it's going to be my first job out of college or seminary and it's going to be amazing. And it's like, no. God doesn't always call us to what's easy and what's obvious. It's just not always the case. The harvest doesn't always look that way. The harvest is plentiful, but it's also difficult a lot of times. It's not easy to reap the harvest. And so he's preparing you, but it's not always what you want or what you expect. It's not always right around the corner. It's not always the easiest place to go. It's not always with people that you understand or that you get along with. It's not always with people you like. Come on. It's just not. Jesus is calling us and he's inviting us and he's equipping us and training us to have our eyes open and to go and to reap the harvest that is in front of us. But it's not always going to be easy. If I can guarantee you anything, it's that. It won't always be easy. So one of the things is to have opportunities. And so we recognize that as a church, that one of the ways that we can encourage you in this way to get out there and to have your eyes open and to participate is by providing opportunities. And so we're always looking for organizations to partner with, not just here locally, but around our country, even around the world. Even a small church like this that doesn't even have its own building, we can do things and we can make a big impact if we're strategic about what we do. And so this past spring, through an organization called Children's Cup, you'll be hearing more about them in months to come, but through Children's Cup, we began a partnership, a brand new partnership with a small church pastored by a man named Stanley Felipe down in Santiago, Dominican Republic. And that little church ministers to a community there called Plentiful. And my wife and I, Rebecca and I, got to visit there this past spring and really fell in love with the people. And I can be real honest with you. And I've been to a lot of places, a lot of countries. It is the most impoverished place that I've ever physically been in my life. I've never seen and witnessed and smelled and experienced that kind of poverty and oppression before. Matter of fact, tomorrow, 3 of our staff members are actually heading back down there to Pontezuela and going to spend a few days there with Pastor Stanley, kind of gathering and connecting with his vision for what he sees and what the needs are and how we're going to be partnering with them in the months and even the years to come. And so real quick, I want to show you a video. It's Pastor Stanley. He's going to introduce you to some of this, and then I'll wrap up with how we can participate in this.
Hello, friends. This is Pastor Stanley in Pontezuela. 5 years ago, when we first entered this community, some of the issues that we found where, poverty is a huge problem here, hunger is a huge problem, racial divide between the Dominicans and Haitians, lack of jobs, lack of opportunities, alcohol is a huge problem, even prostitution. It broke our heart to see the people of the community having the same desires we have. They wanted God to build them a school, a community center. They wanted clean water. They wanted electricity. And they wanted a house of prayer, a place where they could gather as a community to pray and experience God. Really, our vision for the community center is to build a place to build people. We really want nobody to go unseen in this community. And we want to have a place where we can build the children, we can build young people, and we can build the adults. A place that is safe for children to come, be discipled, be loved, be fed, not just with physical food, but with spiritual food. And a place where we'll be able to train the people of the community. We want to help restore dignity here fight injustice in a way that brings glory to God, and really partner with the community to see the kingdom come here, right here, in this beautiful community that is so close to our hearts.
We firmly believe and are confident that Pastor Stanley, the vision that he has for that little community there in the DR, that is a harvest field that has been placed in front of us. That's how we feel. There's a connection there. And this isn't going to be just a, hey, we're going to take a quick trip down there and then we're going to go somewhere else. This is going to be a long-term partnership and commitment. And we're going to do whatever we can. However we can resource them. We know, hey, we're a small church and we have a lot of needs of our own. A building might be nice one day. A permanent facility. But there's so much more that we can be doing in the meantime. That it's not like we can't, or that we don't have the responsibility, until, no, we have the responsibility now. And our eyes have been opened. We've already sent $10,000 to help get started in that community center, the kitchen area. And so we're going to help facilitate that. Your gifts and your giving are allowing us to do that. We're going to have a couple of trips that you and your family can take with us over, a couple of times a year is what we're hoping for. Later this fall, we're going to have a sponsorship Sunday. And so you'll have an opportunity. We're going to invite you to sponsor one or more of the kids that are actually in that community. How cool would it be for us not to do a sponsorship Sunday and have, kids represented all over the world, but where we all have kids in the same community, kids that play together, where when we take a trip, we're actually going and we're all visiting our kids that we've been supporting and praying for. Like that sounds great. That's sharing life. That's going long term. That's really investing big and doing what we know we can do. And that's what we want us to do. Maybe, how might you participate in that? How might God be calling you to participate in that harvest, to be a part of that? Maybe it's something else. Maybe something else you realize that, is right in front of you, that God has placed in front of you. And so I'm going to encourage you to be willing to take a step and to do something. Don't just be aware of it. That's step one. But it's got to continue from there. That's just a starting place. We've got to be willing to go, to do life, to share life with, and then express and share this life-giving message of Jesus. For those of you in here who are Christians, this message has obviously been very much for you. My challenge, my encouragement is to allow your eyes to be opened, to not get nervous, to turn on the news, to see what's going on, to know what's happening around the world, but then be willing to do something about it, to go and to share and to participate. Don't just be a consumer, be a contributor. But then some of you in here are not Christians. You're not a believer. Maybe you're kind of on that fence, or maybe you just thought like this would never be something that you would consider. You walked away from it a long time ago for whatever reason. And if that's the case, maybe, having your eyes open isn't necessarily the step for you. Maybe the step for you is just to allow the eyes of your heart to be open. To be opened up to a God who loves you, who cares for you, who wants to meet with you right where you are, with all of your baggage, just like you are, no strings attached. And if that's you, I want to give you an opportunity to pray with me, to receive that. Would you bow your heads with me for just a second? We recognize that a prayer is not a saving moment. A prayer doesn't save you. There's nothing magical happening. It's just simply declaring what has already taken place in your heart. And so if that's you, if you feel like you're ready to crack the door open to your heart and say yes to Jesus, would you pray with me? Just say, Heavenly Father, I want to open my heart to you. And by opening my heart, I want to open my life to you. Because I know that I can't do this on my own. I've been trying and it has not been working. And so I recognize and confess that I'm a sinner, that I need a Savior. And so I invite you in to take the reins, to take over. I want you to be my Lord. And I pray that that my life from this point forward would somehow be a reflection of my relationship with you. Open my heart and now open my eyes to see the purpose that you have for me and for my life. And I pray this in the saving name of Jesus. Amen.